Is Google politicizing your search results? In a word, yes, they are. We're going to show you some research that proves it to you. A Harvard-trained researcher named Robert Epstein, he studies search results for the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology, and he has been screaming this since 2016. And his research has strongly shown exactly how your search results are skewed by political bent. He published a story all about this in the Daily Caller, but you don't have to just read one day's research because, again, he's been publishing this for almost 6 years. Now, it's just not about what search is shown to you, although that is problematic. It is way more subliminal than that. In fact, today he says that so far he has preserved more than 1.9 million ephemeral experiences. This is exposure to short-lived content that impacts people and then disappears, leaving no trace. He says Google and other companies are able to use this to shift opinion and voting preferences, and we expect to have captured more than 2.5 million by election day. So these are things that maybe have come up in search results maybe in the column or in other places that you can't necessarily track unless you screenshot it. Powerful messages. Epstein says he's been tracking these with his own software, kind of like a Nielsen rating box, for over 6 years. So he kind of likens it to Google's tracking you and he's tracking them, tracking you.
So he started under the Obama administration, went through the Trump administration, now in the Biden administration.
Yes.
And he's been tracking it that whole time.
And so that is one now kind of newer way with these ephemeral experiences that you might see in certain places where you don't even necessarily remember where they are. He hasn't collated all of this data, but he expects it to be wealth of data to go over by election day of 2022. Of course, by then, you may have already seen things that manipulate your opinions and you just don't even know it. Another way that Google is manipulating search results is through suggested search. Now, they say it's to save you time. For instance, when you start to type something into Google and Google suggests the way that you should complete this. I just ran this example for you today, searching military budget 2022-2023. Now, they say, hey, we're just trying to, save you time. But actually, they manipulate voters with these results. So if you're searching for something like,
That's like Subway pre-making your sandwich as you're standing in line saying, oh, we think you need this extra healthy avocado
sort of like
there.
that. Yeah.
Like we're looking at you and we're like, yeah, he could have some vegetables.
Well, for any political topic at this point, right? They're going to put in things and you think, well, let's say the Pennsylvania race between Dr. Oz and John Fetterman.
Right.
They can put in John Fetterman's name in a way that makes you think that a lot of people are searching for him in a positive way, or makes you think that people are searching for him in a negative way. And what is promoted to you might be what you click on, because you think, oh, well, I was going to go look for him and his COVID record, what he did during COVID. And then, you get positive results and you think, oh, okay, I guess he was a pretty good guy around this. So Epstein actually found that Google can manipulate voters with these results from a 50-50 voter to a 90-10 voter. So they can convince you, this is called search suggestion effect.
Wait a minute, wait a second.
So they take like someone who's a 50-50 voter and start showing them something.
Right.
For instance, the John Fetterman that I just gave you. If you're searching John Fetterman something, then it will suggest to you a positive search term.
To push me over the edge.
To push
go from
you.
50-50, now I'm 60-40, I'm going to vote for this guy. Now, but you also said 90-10? So they'll find somebody who's like, I'm 90% in the tank for Donald Trump. And they push stuff to me that then moves me down to 70 or 50?
No. They can take a 50-50 voter who's split and push you into a camp based on what you are searching. They say that they can start manipulating you from the first stroke, like from the first key that you put in there. right?
That's amazing. And so these are these are middle of the road, and these are the target. These are the target.
Absolutely the target.
When you have 100 million people that don't vote in the United States, and you have so many independent voters that are just sitting there, or swing voters, as they call them, who are just, they could swing either way. They're not really sure, depending on how the mood.
Yeah.
So that's who they're targeting.
He doesn't say that that's how they're targeting, but he does actually get around to what party they are favoring. But you could do this with any voter. If you had a voter who was on the fence about, say, Ted Cruz, you could push them in the direction of Ted Cruz easily if you wanted to as well. For instance, if you were interested in figuring out what Ted Cruz did during COVID, and he took a nice trip to Mexico, you could say Ted Cruz COVID, and they could then suggest to you that Ted Cruz was for a lot of open lockdowns, or opposite of lockdowns, right? Was for freedom movement, right?
It's known as freedom.
Yes. So, they could present you with either or.
Right.
And so, yes.
But does the data show that it was biased in one direction or another? Or
we are going to get to that. Yeah.
Okay.
As you can see from the search that I ran, and here's just a screenshot of that, there is also a top box that gives you just the answer to what you're searching for without any more context. Now, how do they choose who gets to give me that answer? That answer here comes from house.gov, an official government source, right? That's called the answer box. Google calls it the featured snippet. Google says they get these from their own algorithmic ranking, but Epstein, the researcher, says that they can shift opinions by more than 10 to 30% by then search results alone based on just what they put there. And there are about 24 ways that search is manipulated. This is just one of them. Because if you're searching for now I search for a lot of things that are controversial based on this show, and I am regularly just served up what the mainstream media wants me to think about those things. And again, it's an easy way to find bias. He points out that Bing does it too, although less so in recent years. And there are about a dozen more ways that search is manipulated. Google admitted to such in 2018 when CFO Ruth Porat said in a leaked video that Google, this is a quote, will use the great strength and resources and reach we have to advance Google's values. Not your values. Right. Their values.
Well, we also, reported here on the show, of course, that we know that the United Nations actively partnering with Google. We featured that story, yes, right, to manipulate search results around climate.
Yes.
Right. So now they own the story on climate when you Google that.
Yes.
Same thing with the World Economic Forum. If you want to Google that or you're not going to find anything. It's all controlled by them.
Yes.
Well, and also, I don't think a lot of people realize that Google is actually a war contractor. They work on a lot of AI and stuff for these drones and things like that. So they are contracted by the government.
Yeah. Same with Microsoft. Same with Amazon. Amazon has a $600 million contract with the CIA. All of these guys, they work actively with them.
Now, Epstein's research further shows that this continued to influence voters, has continued since 2016, and swing voters.
Yeah.
Swing, sway voters.
Or you could swing, sway voters. You could swing voters. You could swing, sway voters.
Yes. It does that pretty easily. And now the same thing seems to be happening for the 2022 midterms. Here's what he says. Our preliminary analysis of the data we've collected so far in 2022 are equally disturbing. In swing states, and especially in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Florida, we are finding a high level of liberal bias in Google search results, but not in search results in Bing, even though they did find that pattern in every election since 2016.
Wow. So right now, Bing is different than Google and search for, wow.
In several swing states, 92% of autoplay videos being fed to YouTube users are coming from liberal news sources. YouTube is owned by Google. Unless Google backs down, it will shift hundreds of thousands of votes on election day itself with those brazen, targeted go vote reminders, and we will catch them doing so. Now, he points out, he supported Biden in 2020, and he observed that a lot of media also was being served to support Biden. And in fact, Republicans agree. Just recently, the Republican National Committee sued Google over email spam filters. They're saying that for most of the month, nearly all of their emails end up in users' inboxes, but not at the end of the month, which is their important fundraising time. And then for some reason, mysteriously, towards the last few days of the month, those emails end up in spam folders. Google's saying, we don't do this. We just, sort of take our patterns and filter from user behavior. But this will be an interesting lawsuit because of what we can learn. If it's not settled privately, which I don't think it will be, unless they get some kind of injunction or they agree to something.
This kind of reminds me of like the whole Fox News fair and balance, right? So it's like, if you look at Google, probably 90% of your search results are going to be accurate and going to be good information that you can use. You're looking up recipes, you're looking up directions and stuff like that. So it puts in your mind that if you do a search on the part of the narratives that they want to hide from you or manipulate, that they're still being accurate because they're accurate every other time. And I think that's where they get a lot of people, because people trust that and still people trust Wikipedia. It's kind of the same thing. So it's like They only have these certain things, but whatever it is that they decide they want to push a narrative on, it's so easy to do. Like I've been getting those go vote notifications on Google and in my email and everything all day today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're right on that.
But I think that the Republican National Committee seems to want to draw out Google for what they know and what their data shows and what they are actively doing. And you have to litigate for that. You can't take their word for it. So every time there's a lawsuit like this or there's an accusation, Google says, absolutely, we don't do this. It's just the algorithm. It's all being surfaced up, right? But we will know based on what is pulled out in discovery. So that's why I find that so interesting.
Yeah, another big piece of this, because now, I mean, you have Jen Psaki, right? So, because talking about lawsuits, right? So this weekend we saw former White House spokesperson Jen Psaki, who's gearing up for her new MSNBC show. She filed a motion because, we're trying to find, she was on the podium actively talking about the collusion between the social media companies. Like, we call up Facebook and we tell them what to do, right? When we see stories, we call them and let them know about it. And so she was talking about this disinformation and misinformation, the collusion between the White House. And so,
well, that got her pulled into a lawsuit where the state of Missouri and Louisiana are suing the Biden administration because they claim that they blocked certain content around COVID during the pandemic. And so the attorneys general of both states are suing the Biden administration. And so she was subpoenaed in this case to do a deposition. And this weekend, her lawyers filed a motion to basically nullify that subpoena and say she should not sit for a deposition. This was the argument she made. Ms. Psaki has explained that complying with the subpoena and devoting several days to preparing for the deposition, as well as attending the deposition itself, would be highly disruptive to both her work and her family. In seeking the subpoena, plaintiffs merely dismissed the burden on Ms. Psaki as minimal and did not address any of these sources of burdens. Now, this burden exists for everybody who is deposed. It's hard.
I was going to say, do we get to use that as an excuse for everything now?
Is that I have a family and a job?
Yeah. I mean, she literally says
jury duty.
She says
Amazon's coming today.
Amazon's coming.
I have a box being delivered this afternoon. I can't be deposed. She literally says she's busy with her new MSNBC job, and her family, and that being deposed would be unduly burdensome on her new MSNBC job.
Yes.
Should have thought about that before you helped. Go against the First Amendment. Should have maybe thought about that.
Yeah, you should have thought about that before you got up there. You got up there and lied every day for a living.
And plus, she was a spokesperson at a time when the Biden administration was going really hard on stay home, do everything at home. So she could make the argument that she could do this virtually if she doesn't want to travel to Louisiana for this.
But no, America needs to see her on MSNBC. Like that, we've been waiting. This is what I get out of bed for. Like, I've been waiting to see Jen Psaki.
Well, I think that it would put the news network in a position of jeopardy if one of their presenters or anchors or reporters had been involved in information censorship. We know that's the case.
Right.
But to actually pull one of their on-air talents out and say, you've been manipulating information with social media, right? Then obviously that's a stain on the network. The network will pretend that it doesn't.
And I just can't see her. I just can't see her pulling the numbers they think she's going to pull anyway. She's going to be like, she'll be prime time for like 6 weeks, and it's like, oh, we're going to put you on the morning show. Now we're going to move you over to MSNBC.
Well, she's not going prime time. She's going to Peacock, which is their streaming network. And in fact, the Vanity Fair screen that I just showed you, this article just came out this weekend. Can we put it back on, the one with her on Vanity Fair? Yeah, that one. So this is a big wet kiss piece that I did read, and it's about how she's like still moving into her office at the DC bureau, and how she's meeting people, and the White House counsel is her bestie, and they go for cocktails every now and again. And it's very much like the reporter's like, well, what do you think American people want from you? And she's like, they want someone who's an insider, who just can like text up whoever and has everybody on my phone, and I can just tell you what it's really like. And I was like, that is incredibly tone deaf. We absolutely want the opposite of that.
I mean, that's why I do
not want an echo chamber.
That's why this show is so successful, is because, you know, again, we can't just call up, well, we can, but, you know, to get people on our show, they're not going to want to come on our show because we're going to hold them accountable. So the people that are going to come on her show are going to all be in the tank for her and in the Biden administration.
Yeah.
There's no way she's going to have on someone who's going to challenge her. Can you imagine she has on someone who's going to challenge her authority and opinion?
No.
No one like that is going to be on her show.
Well, who? Peter Doocy?
So I bet you her first guest, I'm just going to say this, I maybe not, but I bet her first guest that she will have on that show will be Corinne Jean-Pierre.
I was going to say the same thing. That or Sean Spicer.
To talk about,
And we don't want in on that club. People who watch geopolitical news want real answers, and we don't want to see people who are chummy and just sort of in the know. It's like news anchors thinking you want to see them in like a fun costume because you like their persona, kind of. That's super obnoxious. I want nothing to do with that.
CNN already proved how much people wanted to see their hosts behind the scene on CNN Plus. Like, we want to see them in jeans and T-shirts sitting on a couch rather than behind the news thing. No, people did not want to see that. They don't want to see that kind of stuff.
Here's Anderson Cooper, uncensored, hanging out with his dogs.
Right. Yeah.
No one wants to see
We're drinking a beer.
Now, in her defense, she argues that she didn't have any direct involvement with social media when she was in that job in the White House. She says she's already handed over the documents. She's produced what she thinks should satisfy this case. I did look to see if she's defending herself in this capacity when she was subpoenaed, because as a taxpayer, I'm not that interested in defending these private players through taxpayer dollars. The Justice Department is defending the Biden administration, so that is on our taxpayer dollar, but she seems to have a private lawyer. It still irritates me to have to defend the Biden administration for something they may have done that's wrong, but at least if you're a taxpayer in Louisiana or what is the other state? I'm sorry. Missouri, then you're defending the other side. Now, interesting enough, the judge already knew that this would be burdensome on her and ordered the deposition anyway. So her chances at succeeding at getting this deposition thrown out are pretty slim. In fact, he ordered a whole cast of characters to appear in depositions, which was kind of surprising because it's still early in this case. And he said, I don't care if it's burdensome. I want to hear from these people, including other people who've been deposed. Fauci, FBI Supervisory Agent Elvis Chan, let's see, Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, and they are also trying to get Nina Jankowicz. She wasn't deposed in this round, but she has been listed in all of these court documents as someone they do want to hear from.
For people that don't remember Nita Jankowicz, of course, she was the singing TikTok disinformation campaign expert. She was going to be the head of the disinformation
for the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
So I think this judge, he's not that interested in this "I'm too busy" argument, because again, if you let somebody off on the I have kids and I'm too busy for depositions, that implodes a lot of future depositions. The court knows depositions are an imposition. They are purposely that way. And if you ignore one, you can be held in contempt of court. And so I think she is going to have to do this. Whether or not we hear much from it, I don't know, but I'm interested. This is a case to watch because I think this judge is keen to get some answers, and I am too.